He said I was stuck in the past and couldn't adapt to the future. The irony is 6 days later his innovative nephew destroyed our entire $830 million client portfolio. Me. The one they pushed aside. I was the only person who could have prevented it. But I didn't lift a finger. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't what you do. It's watching them drown while you hold the life preserver just out of reach. My name is Alexis Lane, and I've spent 19 years building client relationships that most executives couldn't maintain for 19 months. But on that Wednesday morning in the Crestwood Capital boardroom, none of that history seemed to matter. What mattered was that I was 46, unmarried, and apparently blocking the path for younger talent. I'd like to introduce our new Chief Client Officer, Justin Wallace. Henry Wallace's voice carried across the conference room like thunder before a storm. His nephew stood up, straightening a designer suit that probably cost more than my quarterly rent. Justin was 27, fresh from Columbia with an MBA in wealth management that still had that new diploma smell. His handshake was calculated, rehearsed through countless networking events, not earned through actual client crises. His confidence was borrowed from his surname, not built through years of trust. I applauded along with everyone else. The sound bounced off the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline, each clap feeling like a betrayal of my own career. Justin brings cutting-edge strategies and modern thinking to our firm, Henry continued, his silver hair catching the morning light. In today's rapidly changing wealth management landscape, we need leaders who understand millennial and Gen Z investors. Who speak their language. Their language. I'd managed portfolios for 3 generations of families. I'd guided clients through the 2008 crash, the pandemic volatility, and every market correction in between. But apparently I didn't speak the right language. Alexis, Henry's steel blue eyes found mine across the mahogany table. I'm counting on your experience to help Justin transition smoothly. Your institutional knowledge will be crucial during this handover. Institutional knowledge. Corporate euphemism for, you're too valuable to fire but too old to promote. Absolutely, I heard myself respond, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening beneath my professional composure. Happy to assist. Justin turned toward me, extending his hand again as if we hadn't just shaken 30 seconds ago. I've heard incredible things about your client retention rates, Alexis. I'm genuinely excited to learn your secrets. My secrets. The ones he'd eventually use to replace me entirely. Looking forward to working together, I replied, matching his grip with the precise pressure I'd learned from 19 years of reading people. Firm enough to project confidence, gentle enough not to threaten fragile egos. The meeting dragged on for another 90 minutes. Quarterly performance reviews, portfolio rebalancing strategies, compliance updates, market forecasts. I presented my analysis on emerging investment opportunities, the research I'd compiled during 70-hour weeks, believing it would demonstrate my continued value to the firm. The partners nodded approvingly. Henry thanked me for my thorough preparation. Justin typed furiously on his tablet, occasionally asking questions that revealed he confused hedge funds with mutual funds. When we finally adjourned at 11:30, I gathered my materials with deliberate slowness, watching the others filter out toward their expensive lunches and afternoon golf games. Henry remained, organizing his papers with the practiced efficiency of someone whose assistant actually did all his filing. Alexis, he said without making eye contact. A moment. I lowered myself back into the leather chair, spine straight, hands folded. I realize this wasn't the outcome you anticipated, he began, finally meeting my gaze. But Justin needs mentorship. He's brilliant, top 15% of his class, but he requires your practical expertise. Practical expertise, I echoed neutrally. The board wanted fresh energy. Someone who connects with our younger client demographic. You understand the business climate. Companies are pivoting toward youth-oriented leadership. I understood perfectly. I understood that Justin's surname opened doors my 19 years of excellence couldn't crack. I understood that fresh energy meant male and under 30. I understood that my recent struggles, caring for my aging father after his stroke, the visible exhaustion that came with being a sandwich generation caregiver, marked me as someone with divided priorities. I'll ensure Justin has everything he needs to succeed, I stated, rising from my chair. Henry's relief was almost palpable. I knew I could depend on you. You've always been a consummate professional, Alexis. That's your greatest strength. A professional right up until the game became rigged beyond recognition. I returned to my office, soon to be Justin's office, and stood at the window. Below, Lake Michigan stretched toward the horizon like liquid steel. $830 million in client assets flowed through the relationships I'd cultivated over nearly 2 decades. Every account, every family trust, every succession plan carried my fingerprints. My personal cell number was programmed into the phones of 53 high-net-worth individuals who trusted me with their generational wealth. My phone vibrated. A text from my assistant, Amanda. "This is completely unfair. Everyone knows you deserved that promotion." I deleted it without responding. Sympathy was a distraction I couldn't afford, not when I had portfolios to manage and a nephew to train in the art of my own obsolescence. That evening, I sat in my father's rehabilitation center room, watching him struggle through his speech therapy exercises. His stroke 6 months earlier had left him partially paralyzed, dependent on my income for the specialized care his basic insurance wouldn't cover. "How was work?" he asked, his words slightly slurred but determined. "Eventful," I said, adjusting his blanket. "They promoted someone new into the role I'd been working toward. His good hand found mine. You're better than all of them combined." "Unfortunately, being better doesn't guarantee anything anymore, Dad." I drove home through Chicago's evening traffic, my mind already cataloging vulnerabilities. Not with anger. Anger was for people who still believed in corporate fairness. I was operating from something far more dangerous. Complete clarity about my situation. That night, I opened my laptop and began documenting everything. Not for revenge, not yet. Simply for protection. Every client relationship, every unwritten understanding, every critical detail that existed only in my professional memory. Henry and Justin thought they were inheriting a system. What they were actually inheriting was a house of cards, and I was the only one who knew which card, when removed, would bring down the entire structure. But maybe, just maybe, I'd forget to mention those structural weaknesses during Justin's training sessions. The revelation came on a Monday evening, 3 weeks after Justin's coronation. I'd stayed late finishing risk assessments for our largest client, work that Justin should have been handling but had delegated with a breezy, "You're so much faster at this analysis stuff, Alexis." The executive suite was nearly empty except for the custodial staff. I was heading to the kitchen for coffee when I heard Henry's voice drifting from the small conference room. The door stood slightly ajar, light spilling into the darkened corridor. "I appreciate your concerns, Adam, but the transition is progressing smoothly." Henry's authoritative tone carried clearly. Adam Monroe. Board member, former managing director of our biggest competitor, a man who believed anyone over 45 should be transitioning to retirement, not managing major accounts. "Smoothly because Lane is doing everything," Adam's gravelly voice responded. "How long can you sustain that arrangement?" "As long as necessary. Alexis is dedicated to the firm. She has obligations." My hand froze on the kitchen door handle. "Obligations?" Adam's chuckle sounded like ice cracking in a glass. "Her father's stroke left him requiring expensive rehabilitation. She's the sole financial support. Her brother moved to Australia years ago. Between the care facility costs and her condominium mortgage, she's stretched thin financially. She needs this position." "Smart leverage," Adam acknowledged. "But keeping her around poses risks. She knows too much about our client relationships. Which is precisely why we need her training Justin. Once he's fully operational, 6 to 8 months, we'll restructure her role. Senior consultant position perhaps. Reduced hours, reduced compensation. Keep her close enough that she can't take her knowledge to competitors, but marginalized enough that she's not a succession threat." My breath caught in my throat. "Consultant role," Adam said thoughtfully. "At her age, she should consider it generous. Most firms would have pushed her out entirely by now. The elegant part is she'll actually thank us," Henry continued. "We'll frame it as work-life balance, an opportunity to care for her father without the stress of managing major portfolios. By the time she understands it's actually a demotion, Justin will have secured all her client relationships. And if she resists? She won't. Alexis Lane is pragmatic above all else. She's got a father in rehabilitation who needs consistent insurance coverage and 12 years until retirement eligibility. She'll accept whatever terms we offer because she has no choice. I stood in that hallway for what felt like an eternity but was probably only 60 seconds. My father's rehabilitation costs. The condominium I'd purchased, foolishly believing it represented stability and professional success. Every late night, every client crisis I'd resolved, every innovation I'd brought to this firm, reduced to leverage points in a calculation of my disposability. They were correct about one aspect. I was pragmatic. Intensely so. I slipped into the kitchen, ran water loudly to mask any suggestion I'd been eavesdropping, and prepared coffee I no longer wanted. When I emerged, the hallway was empty. Henry and Adam had departed, probably heading to whatever exclusive club where these career executions were really planned and celebrated. I returned to my office and stared at my computer screen, not seeing the risk assessment spreadsheets but instead calculating trajectories and contingencies. $830 million in client assets flowing through relationships built on personal trust and institutional knowledge. Connections with estate attorneys from Seattle to Boston. Direct lines to family office managers who would restructure their entire portfolios based on my recommendation. The private cell phone numbers of CEOs who'd call me personally when markets got volatile. They believed I was trapped by my obligations. They were partially correct. But they'd miscalculated something fundamental about cornered professionals. We're dangerous precisely because we understand exactly what we stand to lose. I saved my work, shut down my computer, and drove to the rehabilitation center despite the late hour. My father was awake, reading with his good hand, the weak side of his face drooping slightly. "Late night visit?" he asked, setting down his book. "Just wanted to see you," I said, kissing his forehead gently. He studied me with eyes that had seen me through childhood's scraped knees, teenage heartbreaks, and now this. "What happened?" I told him. Not everything, he didn't need that burden, but enough. The promotion going to Henry's nephew. The overheard conversation. The plan to demote me once I'd finished training my replacement. "What are you going to do?" he asked when I finished. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But Dad, I need you to understand something. Whatever happens over the next few months, whatever decisions I make, your care doesn't change. I've got savings. I've got options they don't know about. Alexis." His good hand gripped mine with surprising strength. "Your mother, God rest her, she taught you to be strong. She never let anyone diminish her value. Don't let these people diminish yours." "I won't," I promised. And in that moment I meant it with every fiber of my being. The lunch conversations started the following week. I'd wait until 12:45, when Justin inevitably departed for his extended networking lunches and the executive floor cleared like a lifeboat drill. Then I'd close my temporary office door and begin making calls on my personal cell. "Robert, it's Alexis Lane from Crestwood. How's your daughter's gallery opening coming along?" Robert Pemberton managed a $47 million family trust. We'd worked together for 11 years through his messy divorce, his father's estate settlement, and his daughter's entrepreneurial ventures. "Alexis, the opening's next month. You're coming, right? Emma specifically asked me to invite you." We talked about his daughter, his recent golf trip, his concerns about market volatility. Then carefully I shifted the conversation. "Robert, I wanted to give you advance notice about some transitions happening at Crestwood. There's been restructuring in leadership. I'll be stepping back from day-to-day portfolio management over the next several months." Silence then. "Stepping back? Alexis, you've managed our family's wealth for over a decade. Justin Wallace, Henry's nephew, is taking over as Chief Client Officer. He's very capable, recently graduated from Columbia's MBA program. I don't care if he graduated from Harvard, Yale, and Oxford simultaneously. Our family trusts you, not some nephew who probably still uses training wheels on his career bike." I smiled despite myself. "Justin is learning quickly. I'm confident he'll maintain the same standards of service." "I'm not." Robert's voice hardened. "Alexis, let me be direct. If you're leaving Crestwood, we need to discuss where our portfolio is going. My father trusted you with his legacy. I trust you with my children's futures. That trust isn't transferable to whoever Henry decides to promote." "I appreciate your confidence, Robert. Though I should mention I'm bound by a non-compete agreement for 90 days after any departure." 90 days. He processed this. "And after 90 days? After that, I'd be free to explore other opportunities. Keep me informed, Alexis. We've got decisions to make about our wealth management strategy, and those decisions revolve around you, not Crestwood. 7 phone calls that week. Each one following a similar pattern. Personal connection, subtle notification about changes, gentle reminder about non-compete limitations. I never criticized Justin or Henry. Never suggested clients should leave Crestwood. Simply shared information, professional to professional, trusted advisor to valued client. What they chose to do with that information was entirely their decision. Between calls, I observed Justin systematically alienating the very clients I'd spent years cultivating. He'd return from lunches smelling of expensive scotch and overconfidence, certain he'd secured another relationship when he'd actually just convinced another family to start exploring alternatives. Had an excellent meeting with the Brennan family, he announced one Thursday, loosening his tie. They're interested in our new cryptocurrency hedge fund strategy. The Brennans. Old Chicago money, 5 generations of conservative wealth preservation, deeply skeptical of anything more volatile than municipal bonds. That's wonderful, I said carefully. Did you discuss their risk tolerance profile? Didn't need to. The returns speak for themselves. Crypto is the future. The future that would terrify elderly Kylie Preston, whose husband had built their fortune through careful real estate investments and who trusted me to protect their grandchildren's inheritances from exactly this kind of speculative nonsense. My Wednesday afternoon call was to Connor Hayes at Whitmore Asset Management, our largest competitor. We'd maintained a collegial relationship for years, occasionally sharing industry insights at conferences and charitable events. Alexis Lane. To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure? Just checking in, Connor. How's the firm's expansion into the Western regional market progressing? We discussed industry trends, regulatory changes, market predictions. Then, naturally, the conversation shifted. I've been hearing interesting rumors about Crestwood, Connor said. Something about significant leadership changes? Henry promoted his nephew, Justin Wallace, to Chief Client Officer. I'm transitioning to more of an advisory capacity. Advisory capacity. His tone suggested he'd translated that corporate euphemism perfectly. Alexis, you're one of the best relationship managers in Chicago. Advisory capacity is code for sidelining talent. When your non-compete expires, we should talk seriously. We're expanding our high net worth division and need someone who actually understands that wealth management is about people, not just portfolios. I appreciate that, Connor. Though I've got some family obligations that require careful consideration. Whatever you need. Flexible scheduling, work-from-home arrangements, family medical leave. We value experience at Whitmore, not just youthful enthusiasm. I filed that conversation away with the others. Options. Leverage. Backup strategies for backup strategies. The most delicate call was to Illinois State Senator Catherine Brighton, whose investment committee I'd advised on pension fund strategies. She wielded considerable influence over financial services regulations and had always appreciated straightforward communication. Alexis, excellent timing. I've been meaning to reach out about the pension fund rebalancing proposal. We discussed her committee's concerns, potential legislative impacts, compliance considerations. Then carefully I mentioned the leadership changes at Crestwood. Henry Wallace promoted his nephew over you? Her voice sharpened. After 19 years of exemplary service? Corporate decisions often involve factors beyond pure performance metrics, Senator. Factors like nepotism and age discrimination? She didn't mince words. Alexis, this concerns me. Crestwood manages several municipal pension funds. If they're prioritizing family connections over proven expertise, that raises questions about their fiduciary responsibility. I'm sure everything will continue smoothly, I said diplomatically. I'm not sure at all. In fact, I think our committee needs to schedule a comprehensive review of all our wealth management partnerships. Ensure we're working with firms that prioritize competence and stability, not nepotistic experimentation. When I ended that call, I knew Senator Brighton would be making inquiries that would land on Henry's desk within days. Political pressure, regulatory scrutiny, uncomfortable questions from government clients. Another crack in the foundation Henry assumed was solid concrete. Each conversation was a thread carefully pulled from the tapestry I'd woven over 19 years. I wasn't cutting them, That would be too obvious, too legally actionable. I was simply loosening the weave, creating spaces where pressure could accumulate, where failures could cascade exponentially. Justin remained oblivious to these shifting foundations. He saw organizational charts and asset allocation spreadsheets. He didn't perceive the intricate human infrastructure that transformed those papers into actual, functioning wealth management relationships. And by the time he discovered that fundamental lesson, it would be catastrophically too late. Every evening, I documented these conversations meticulously in my personal records. Dates, times, discussion topics. Nothing actionable, nothing that violated confidentiality agreements. Just a professional maintaining her network, managing transitions responsibly, protecting relationships she'd built through 2 decades of dedication. If anyone questioned my actions, and they would eventually, I'd been nothing but helpful. A consummate professional right up until the moment I walked away from the burning building I'd stopped trying to save. I timed it with surgical precision. 4:15 on a Friday afternoon, April 12th. The office was already emptying, people eager to start their weekends. Justin had departed at 2 o'clock for what he called a strategic planning session, but was obviously a golf outing with his uncle. Henry was in his corner office, probably reviewing quarterly numbers and congratulating himself on his nephew's seamless transition. I knocked twice on his door and entered without waiting for permission. 19 years earned me that small act of rebellion. Alexis. Henry looked up from his computer monitors, expression shifting from irritation to cautious attention. What can I do for you? I placed the single sheet of paper on his imported Italian desk. Crestwood capital letterhead, 3 paragraphs, my signature at the bottom. He read it once, then again, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally something approaching panic. 60 days notice. His voice was carefully controlled. Alexis, what is this about? It's about recognizing when it's time to pursue other opportunities, I said, settling into the chair across from him without invitation. Justin is performing admirably. He's ready to take full ownership of the client relationships. But he's not, Henry caught himself. What I mean is, the transition timeline was supposed to extend through the end of the year. You're essential to maintaining client confidence during this period. Justin is exceptionally talented. Top 15% at Columbia, as you've mentioned frequently. I'm confident in his ability to maintain the standards Crestwood is known for. Henry's fingers drummed against his mahogany desk. Is this about compensation? Because we could discuss performance bonuses. Perhaps restructure your role too. It's not about compensation. Then what? Another firm? Because I should remind you that your non-compete clause is ironclad. 90 days, Alexis. I'm aware of every word in my employment contract, Henry. I've had legal counsel review it extensively. I'm not moving to a competitor. I'm taking time to care for my father. His rehabilitation requires more attention than my current schedule allows. The father card. He couldn't argue against that without revealing himself as the callous executive he actually was. Alexis, be reasonable. Justin needs more time. The Pemberton account alone. I've documented everything. Procedures, client preferences, portfolio strategies, relationship histories. Justin has complete access to all systems and contact information. I'll spend the next 60 days ensuring an absolutely seamless transition. 60 days isn't sufficient time. It will have to be. He stood, pacing to his floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. The Chicago skyline glittered in the late afternoon sun, all glass and steel and ambition. This seems sudden. After 19 years, you're giving us 60 days. Would you prefer I leave immediately? No. He turned sharply. No, we need those 60 days. We need... He stopped, recalculating. What if we extended your transition? Kept you as a senior consultant? Part-time, work from home, you could care for your father while still supporting Justin's development. The exact demotion they'd planned to force on me in 3 months, now offered as if it were a generous accommodation. I appreciate the offer, Henry. But no. A clean separation is better for everyone. Better for whom? The mask slipped slightly, exposing the anger underneath. You're leaving us in an extremely difficult position. I'm leaving you with comprehensive documentation and a brilliant nephew who's eager to innovate. I'm certain Crestwood will thrive. He tried one final angle. The board will have concerns about this timing. They may question your professionalism. Future references could be complicated. A threat. Subtle but unmistakable. I smiled, standing slowly. Henry, I've given this firm 19 years of 80-hour weeks, sacrificed holidays, postponed personal relationships, and built client relationships that generate $830 million in managed assets. If the board wants to question my professionalism because I'm caring for my elderly father who had a stroke, well, I paused at his door. That reflects on Crestwood's values, not mine. He deflated visibly. We both understood he couldn't push harder without risking an age discrimination lawsuit or worse, a PR nightmare about a firm that punishes employees for caring for sick parents. Fine. 60 days. But I want exhaustive transition documentation. Every client, every account, every relationship nuance. Of course, I'll have Justin shadow my every decision for the next 8 weeks. He'll be completely prepared. Another lie. Justin would shadow me, but he'd only witness what I chose to show him. Surface operations, not the underground network of trust and personal connection that actually sustained these relationships. And Alexis, Henry's voice stopped me at the threshold. I hope you're not making a decision you'll regret. The wealth management world is a small community. Burning bridges has lasting consequences. I turned back, meeting his cold stare directly. I'm not burning anything, Henry. I'm simply stepping aside and allowing Justin's innovative approach to shine. Isn't that exactly what you wanted? He had no response to that perfectly reasonable statement. I walked back to my temporary office, passing the junior associates and administrative staff. Word had clearly spread already. I could tell by the shocked expressions and hurried whispers. By Monday morning, every person at Crestwood would know. My phone vibrated within minutes. Connor Hayes from Whitmore. Heard you gave notice. Offer stands whenever your non-compete expires. Name your terms. Then Robert Pemberton. My assistant said you're leaving Crestwood. We need to talk immediately about relocating our portfolio. Kylie Preston. Is it true you're departing? Justin Wallace mentioned cryptocurrency investments. Alexis, we need to discuss this. The dominoes were already falling and I hadn't even emptied my desk yet. That weekend, I sat with my father in the rehabilitation center's garden area, spring flowers beginning to bloom around us. So you actually did it, he said, his speech slightly clearer after weeks of intensive therapy. I gave notice yesterday. How'd Henry take it? About as well as a man who just realized his life raft has a massive hole. I squeezed his hand gently. Dad, things might get complicated over the next couple months. There might be professional fallout. He laughed, the sound still slightly lopsided but genuine. Alexis, your mother used to say that people who underestimate quiet competence always pay the highest price. Let them discover exactly how much they didn't appreciate. I learned from the best. No, he corrected. You learned and then you became better than both of us combined. Now show them what happens when they mistake patience for weakness. Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of an avalanche. I walked into Crestwood at 7:45 to find Justin already in the office, looking like he'd slept in his suit. His usual confidence had evaporated, replaced by something approaching panic. Alexis, thank God. I've got 23 emails about account concerns, and I don't understand half of what they're asking. Let's go through them together, I said, settling at the conference table in his office, still mentally my office despite the nameplates changing. I walked him through each concern step by step, process by process. Showed him which forms to complete, which approval codes to enter, which compliance protocols to follow. What I didn't mention was that Robert Pemberton only accepted portfolio updates on Tuesday mornings before 9 a.m. his time, or that Kylie Preston's daughter actually made most investment decisions but preferred her mother receive the credit, or that the approval codes I was teaching him would expire in exactly 30 days and require renewal through a process I'd established but never documented. This seems manageable, Justin said, frantically taking notes. It's all in the documentation I've prepared, I assured him. The documentation that was technically accurate but practically useless without the context he didn't know to request. Tuesday brought the first significant crack. Robert Pemberton called Justin directly, and Justin made the mistake of putting him on speakerphone while I was in the room. Mr. Wallace, I've been a Crestwood client for 11 years. I've received an email suggesting we explore aggressive growth strategies for our conservative trust portfolio. Please explain this recommendation. Mr. Pemberton, Robert. May I call you Robert? I believe in maximizing returns through strategic risk optimization. Your portfolio has significant growth potential we haven't fully leveraged. Silence on the other end. Then, my portfolio is designed to preserve generational wealth for my grandchildren's education. Strategic risk optimization sounds like gambling with my family's future. I wouldn't call it gambling. What would Alexis call it? Justin glanced at me desperately. I could have intervened, could have explained that Robert's father had lost everything in the 1987 crash and the family had been deeply conservative ever since. That suggesting aggressive growth to Robert Pemberton was like suggesting skydiving to someone afraid of heights. Instead, I remained silent, taking notes like a dutiful transition assistant. Justin fumbled through 15 minutes of business school jargon while Robert grew increasingly cold. When the call finally ended, Robert's parting words were, "I'll be reviewing our options." That seemed tense, I observed mildly. He's just resistant to change, Justin said defensively. Older clients don't understand modern portfolio theory. Older clients. Robert was 53. Henry's age, actually. But Justin saw anyone over 40 as a relic. Wednesday, the Kylie Preston situation exploded. He called me directly, bypassing Justin entirely. Alexis, I received materials about cryptocurrency investment opportunities. Please tell me this is some kind of mistake. Justin has been exploring diversification strategies, I said carefully. I don't care what he's exploring. Our family has preserved wealth for 5 generations through careful, conservative investments. We survived the Depression because we didn't chase fashionable nonsense. I want to know if our portfolio is safe. I'm transitioning out of day-to-day management, Kylie. Justin will be your primary contact going forward. Then we're transitioning our portfolio somewhere else. 47 years, Alexis. My husband worked with your predecessor, I've worked with you. This firm was built on trust, not cryptocurrency gambling promoted by someone who probably still gets carded at bars. I made appropriate sympathetic sounds but offered no solutions. Kylie Preston would move her $23 million portfolio and Justin would learn, too late, that wealth management wasn't about algorithms and trending investments. By Thursday, the cascade accelerated beyond even my projections. 6 more clients called with concerns. 3 explicitly mentioned exploring alternatives. The Illinois Pension Fund Committee, prompted by Senator Brighton's routine review, requested an emergency meeting to discuss leadership stability at Crestwood. Justin was drowning and I watched from the shore with my arms folded. I don't understand, he said Thursday afternoon, slumped in his chair. I'm following every procedure you documented. I'm implementing best practices from Columbia's curriculum. Why is everything falling apart? These relationships take time to develop, I offered gently. Time? Alexis, we're losing clients. The board is asking questions. Uncle Henry is furious. He said Justin stopped himself. He said I'm what? Nothing. It doesn't matter. But it did matter. Henry had undoubtedly claimed I was sabotaging Justin, undermining his nephew through some nefarious scheme. The truth was far simpler. I'd simply stopped preventing the natural consequences of their terrible decision. Friday morning, my 58th day at Crestwood, arrived with a special kind of chaos. The emergency board meeting had been scheduled for 10 a.m. Henry called my office at 8:15. My office? Now. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 5 days. Justin sat in the corner looking like a puppy who'd been scolded but didn't understand why. Alexis, we're losing clients at an unprecedented rate. 8 accounts representing $167 million in assets have either transferred or initiated transfer proceedings. The board is demanding explanations. That's concerning, I said neutrally. Concerning? It's a catastrophe. The Illinois Pension Fund is threatening to pull their entire portfolio. That's $94 million. Senator Brighton is asking questions about our management structure and succession planning. These transitions can be challenging, I acknowledged. Challenging. Justin spoke up, his voice cracking slightly. This is deliberate. You're sabotaging me. I turned to him calmly. Justin, I've provided comprehensive documentation. I've answered every question you've asked. I've sat beside you during client calls. What specific action have I taken that constitutes sabotage? He floundered. You didn't tell me about Robert Pemberton's history with market volatility. Did you ask about his personal background and risk psychology? No, but... Did you review the client history files I prepared? They include detailed notes about each family's investment philosophy, personal experiences, and communication preferences. I skimmed them, but there's hundreds of pages. Yes. 19 years of relationship building doesn't fit on a PowerPoint slide. Henry interrupted. Alexis, enough. We need you to stay. Another 6 months. A year. Whatever it takes to stabilize these accounts. We'll triple your compensation, Justin added desperately. Full equity partnership. Whatever you want. I looked at both of them. Henry, whose nepotism had created this disaster, and Justin, who'd assumed a business degree could replace decades of earned trust. Gentlemen, my father needs me. That hasn't changed. And frankly, I've provided everything necessary for success. If Justin is struggling, perhaps the issue isn't my transition support. Perhaps it's that this role requires more experience than a 27-year-old possesses, regardless of his surname or academic credentials. The silence was profound. You've destroyed my nephew's career, Henry said quietly, rage barely contained beneath his controlled tone. No, Henry. You destroyed his career by promoting him beyond his capabilities. I simply stopped protecting him from the consequences of your nepotism. The board will ensure you never work in wealth management again. Threaten me again, I said, standing, and I'll have my attorney contact your board about age discrimination, wrongful constructive dismissal, and hostile work environment. I've documented everything, Henry. Every conversation, every responsibility Justin couldn't handle, every time I saved accounts he endangered. You promoted an unqualified nephew, planned to demote me into obscurity, and now you're shocked that removing me had consequences. I collected my bag and walked toward the door. Oh, and Henry, my non-compete expires in 33 days. I've already received 3 offers from firms who actually value experience over nepotism. Robert Pemberton, Kylie Preston, and 7 other families have specifically stated they'll move their portfolios wherever I go. So you haven't just lost a senior employee, you've lost $289 million in client assets who were loyal to me, not Crestwood. Justin looked like he might be sick. Henry's face had gone gray. I'll work my final 2 days remotely, I continued. Anything Justin needs can be handled via email. I'm sure you'll both land on your feet. After all, Justin's got that Columbia MBA, and Henry, you've got the board position your family connections secured 30 years ago. You'll be fine. I walked out of Henry Wallace's office for the final time, past the junior associates who were pretending not to eavesdrop, through the lobby where I'd entered hopefully 19 years earlier, and into the Chicago morning air. My phone was already ringing. Connor Hayes from Whitmore. Heard there was